First off, this story happened almost 10 years ago. I'll jump right in because it's long. I got home from work one day and logged into Facebook to find a message from someone I didn't know. It was too long ago to remember verbatim what was said, but it was along the lines of, "Hey Ryan, I know you have no idea who I am, but I've been trying to decide what to do for a few days and figured I had to let you know what's been going on. Someone has been catfishing me using your identity for over 2 years, and I just found out about it last week." The sender of the email was clearly pretty shaken up and understandably was experiencing a mix of emotions. According to her, she had met the imposter online a little over 2 years prior to her writing this, and that they had been engaged in a pretty intimate long-distance relationship for a majority of that time. The imposter had created a Facebook and had over time reposted almost all of my photos with their own captions to them, including a good amount of art I'd drawn that they took credit for, haha. They created fake profiles for a good amount of my close family and friends so they could comment on the photos of themselves to make the profile seem legit. The funniest part to me is that although most things in my real life seem to be mirrored in this fake profile, I, straight male, was instead portrayed as trans. I think the main reason for this was that the sender of the email and the imposter would actually speak on the phone, and the imposter turned out to be female in the end, and therefore needed a reason to justify her more feminine-sounding voice. The sender of the email was justifiably both angry and creeped out and wanted to find the catfish. She started asking me a lot of questions about my life, but phrasing them like, "Is your sister's name Jennifer? And did you go to Hilltop High School?" Some of them were clearly information that anyone could glean from a quick browse of my profile. But then she asked, "Is your best friend Tammy?" Which struck me as odd since despite this person actually being my closest friend and who I spend the most time with, we have barely any Facebook photos together, and most are from a long time ago. Then she asked, "Were you adopted, and are your half-siblings' names Rob and Jim?" Which sealed the deal for me since I knew for a fact I'd never posted about being adopted online. The sender of the email already had an idea that this person had known me in real life, but this confirmed it for me. The sender of the email had contacted me shortly after confronting the imposter for the first time. I guess after 2 years, they'd finally become suspicious of the fact that the imposter wouldn't show their face. I have no idea how it took this long for them to figure that they were being played, but I'm glad they finally decided to give the ultimatum of show your face or I'm cutting you off. I'm pretty sure this is the point where the imposter admitted to being a catfish and that she'd been using the identity of someone she had a crush on in high school before hanging up. I was given the URL so I could look through the profile myself, which was up for about 2 days after I saw it before it was all removed. It was definitely really bizarre. The imposter had posted more than I ever had on Facebook, and it genuinely seemed like they'd lived a pretty involved double life online as me. Almost everyone I'd posted photos with on my real profile would then have their own fake profiles created that had enough content to be genuinely convincing so they could be tagged in and validate these new photos. Some of these profiles seemed to have gone and made their own real friends as well, and I wondered if any of those were used to facilitate even more online dating deception. Either way, the amount of time that this person had spent fabricating their alter ego's online presence was pretty shocking. The whole time I'd been crawling down this Facebook rabbit hole, the sender of the email was looking through my real profile. After a while, she sent me a message saying, "Did you take these photographs?" and showed me what I remember as a black and white photos of a barn or something. I hadn't, which was weird since everything else on the fake profile originated with me, and she'd noticed the discrepancy. We both tried reverse image searching with no luck. Then, either through a stroke of genius or somewhat suspiciously, I really couldn't tell, she thought to flip the fake number imposter had written into the fake FB profile around in reverse, and a Google search came up with a landline that belonged to the home address of a girl that I'd gone to high school with. Real me was Facebook friends with real imposter's profile, so we both went snooping around and found the photo that she'd claimed I'd taken, which pretty much confirmed to me that this was the imposter. I'm pretty sure there were more indicators to the sender as well, but I can't remember. I thought about messaging her for a while, but decided that it probably wouldn't lead to anything good. At the time, my thoughts were definitely, let's not meet. I talked a few times with the sender of the email just to try and decompress a bit, but honestly just wanted to distance myself from the situation and also had my suspicions about the sender as well. I figured maybe it was impostering one last-ditch effort to try and talk to me. Although when it was all over, the sender seemed to be eager to leave this all behind as well, so maybe not. Either way, it was a really strange experience. I felt mostly freaked out and violated, but I guess there was a small part of me that was flattered by it. I had a lot of mixed emotions. The weirdest part to me is that I'm a really approachable person and would have definitely been willing to talk and probably be friends if this person had just approached me instead. Although I'm still not sure if this was done out of an obsession for me or if this person felt like I was just a suitable image to base this fabricated persona off of. I remember talking to her probably twice throughout high school and really didn't have a very good idea of who she was other than a quiet hipster girl. If either person involved reads this, I'd definitely be happy to talk now. It's been years, but I've gone from being very put off to always wondering why this person chose me over a myriad of other more attractive or interesting people online to base their other life off of. According to the sender who contacted me, she'd probably spent more time online pretending to be me than she actually did going about her own life. I have a tumultuous history of addiction and have had plenty of my own escapes, which is why it's always fascinated me that someone would want to pretend to live someone else's life as a means of doing that. Because at the end of the day, the person pretending to be me had no idea that I spent my time daydreaming of being a different person as well. I guess it just goes to show that no matter how much you wish you were someone else, chances are that person has plenty of their own reasons to want to escape their own demons. For context, I am from a small town that houses 3 different elementary schools and only 1 middle school and high school, connected by the gymnasium and a tunnel between the 2 buildings. I had lived there my entire life, and I went to a different school than most other people mentioned in this story. Back when I was in middle school, I had a litany of bullies who loved making every moment of my day a living hell. They did pretty much everything you could think of, ranging from pranks in the middle of class to downright physical assault. But all of them were nothing compared to this one girl I met at the beginning of 7th grade, whom we're going to call Sadie. Sadie was a stereotypical mean girl in every sense of the word. Loved fashion, had a gaggle of friends willing to do her bidding, and every guy was into her or wanted her. She was the kid with the highest amounts of detentions, argued a lot with teachers, and the principal pretty much did nothing about her actions, and made a habit of having fun with some specific kids, which included me. I was a plus-sized kid, a scaredy cat, gullible, and a bit of a pushover, but I did try to do well in school and kept to myself. But that didn't do much. As soon as Sadie took notice of me, she took it upon herself to make sure every time we even saw each other, she'd make me miserable. At the beginning, it wasn't anything much. She started rumors about me, talked shit about me online. I didn't have social media yet, so I didn't find that out until later. And in school, and threw things at me that ranged from her garbage to one of her textbooks. It wasn't terrible at first. Sadie was annoying, sure, but I had workarounds, so I just ignored her. But when other kids saw that I wasn't going to fight back, they joined in and took things way too far. Almost daily, I have been chased in the halls, ganged up on in the bathrooms, had my food stolen, gotten blamed by the teachers for their dumb actions in class, and many other things. These kids had me on edge and feeling practically worthless for the entire school year, to the point of me considering just running away to avoid the hell of going back to school. Why didn't I tell the school, you may ask? Well, I tried dozens of times. Teachers, guidance counselors, even the principal. But they didn't care. The school was honestly not the best, and they were pretty negligent to everything that didn't involve funds, sports events, and GPA for the year. So they gave no heed to me when I tried to tell them what was going on with Sadie and her lackeys. These are some of their real responses from incidents that happened. When I had gotten my backpack thrown down the stairs and a calculator inside that I brought from home got broken. It's your property, your problem. When Sadie had written a fat joke alongside a slur on my locker door in permanent marker. You have no evidence that it was her. When Sadie's boy toy and his friends cornered me outside the changing rooms for Jim to ask me for something, they were probably just kidding around. All of them were spearheaded by Sadie, who was practically in charge that year, and nothing she did was getting her into trouble. Summer could not come fast enough that year. By the time 7th grade was over, they let those kids get away with so much. I honestly gave up on trying to get outside help at that point. As I got some personal help that summer, I decided that things would be different by the time I had to go back to school for the following year. I was not going to be Sadie's personal punching bag anymore. When 8th grade started up, I was ready. I learned MMA self-defense, I defended myself vocally, I wasn't so quiet anymore, and I fought back. And it worked. None of the old bullies from last year even looked my way again. Except for Sadie, who still tried to pull her usual stunts. But the longer I showed her, I didn't care, the more it pissed her off. Honestly, it felt like ample revenge to all of the shit she put me through last year. Sadie, however, would not let it go for the life of her. I didn't know it then, but this whole act of hers would end up taking a bad turn. One day, I was walking to the gym, with Sadie following close behind me. She did not share a gym class with me, but she did like following me around in between classes and trying to get a rise out of me. This day, however, was not great for me. I don't exactly remember why now, but I was stressed out and I kept getting pissed off over whatever went wrong that day. Sadie following behind, trying out different insults and comments about me, sent me over the edge. In a quick motion, I stopped walking, spun around, pushed Sadie backwards and spit towards her, with it landing on her leg. I told her to just fuck off and leave me alone. I didn't know what I was really expecting her reaction to be, but it sure as hell wasn't what she did. Sadie just stood there, frozen, staring at me. I expected her to be coughing up blood from rage, or her screaming, or anything at all, but she just stood there, as if a deer in the headlights. I didn't think about it at the time, as I left for gym not long after, and eventually forgot about it. After school, I was walking across the school building to head for the parking lot next to the high school building, where I was to catch the bus. Everything felt normal until I saw Sadie not far behind me. I didn't think anything weird about it, so I ignored it and kept walking, until I noticed she was taking the same path I was to the buses. This wouldn't be odd if she actually rode the buses at all. Sadie walked to and from school every single day. If not that, someone would come pick her up. But the carpool lot was in the opposite direction of the buses. I took a different path than my normal route around the back of the school. I looked back to check, and yep, Sadie was taking the exact same path I was, and she stopped walking every time I looked back at her. I began picking up the pace a bit, and from behind I could hear her running to catch up. By the time I was nearing the bus lot, she was somewhere around 10 feet right behind me, still jogging to follow me. I definitely did not want her to learn which bus was mine, nor did I want her to follow me home, so I decided to fake her out. I jumped onto a different bus, much to the dismay of the driver, and Sadie ran in after me. After she got in front of the bus driver to yell at her about something, I ran off and raced to my actual bus, which was all the way on the other end where this particular bus was. I got in, and the bus drove away just as Sadie got off to see where I went. The next day, I didn't see Sadie anywhere at school. Not in any of the classes, not at lunch, not even after school either. I asked, but nobody knew where she went. This went on for the rest of the week. The bus incident took place on a Monday, and the disappearing act happened on Tuesday. By Thursday, I began to relax about the whole thing. I still didn't understand what Sadie was doing with the whole bus incident, but as long as she was gone, things felt okay. Until Friday afternoon came along. Like the last few days, Sadie wasn't there, so I was pretty relaxed for most of it. When the end of the school day came, I was about to walk out the front doors to the building when something stopped me. I had a horrible feeling in my stomach, telling me not to go outside. I had no idea where that came from, but I thought it was just my leftover anxiety playing tricks on me. So I headed out anyway, not still twisting. The middle school and high school were all a part of one connecting path system, which means we all had hallways and walkways connecting both the main middle school and the main high school buildings, with one long sidewalk path out front. The parking lot, where I had to walk to my bus, was on the opposite end of this long sidewalk, which ran in front of both the middle school and in front of the high school. This can make for a pretty long walk, and the doors leading into the high school, often flooded with students, make for some interesting obstacles. This would all come into play when this happened. I had just walked down the outside stairs to the sidewalk when I saw someone run around a corner from the building. I looked over and it was Sadie, looking as pissed as a rabid dog, full sprinting right towards me. I bolted, running faster than I ever had in my whole life, running off nothing but pure adrenaline and fear. Sadie was catching up quickly behind me, and all I could do was run and pray for help. I dodged between crowds of kids and just tried to lose her somewhere in the masses, not caring at all if I bumped into people, only afraid that Sadie was still behind me. By the time I reached the buses, I didn't see her anywhere, so I stopped and nearly collapsed to catch my breath. I felt relief for only a second, until she popped out of nowhere from the side of the crowd and lunged at me. Sadie grabbed me by the hair and backpack, swinging me around in a circle as I tried to get her off me. She kept pulling and jerking so much, I felt my hair being ripped at some points. But she kept going. I screamed for help, kicking and punching blindly in Sadie's direction. But either nobody wanted to get involved, or were too scared to break us up, because there was nobody who came forward. Sadie let go of my hair to reach for something behind her. And what happened next was only a miracle. My older brother was walking out of the high school drinking a soda when he saw the scene and ran to help. He was the only one who knew about Sadie and recognized her when we had gotten to school in the mornings. He threw his soda at Sadie's head, which startled her enough to let me go and drop whatever she was holding. I grabbed my brother and we took off for the bus, making it just before it drove off. After we found a seat, I looked back outside. What I saw still gives me chills. Sadie was on the ground, arms pinned by a teacher, and right on the ground next to her was an open hunting knife. I knew without a doubt that was hers because of the sound I heard when she dropped it earlier. Next Monday, I got called down to the office where my brother was also waiting. We got pulled into the counselor's office where there were 2 police officers waiting. Apparently, after we ran, a high school teacher saw Sadie picking up the weapon and apprehended her, while another person called the police. They got Sadie into interrogation, and now they needed to hear what happened from me. I practically broke down right then and there and told them everything. What Sadie did to me last year, what I almost did because of her torment, the bus incident the week prior, and what happened on the sidewalk. My brother put his arm around me while I just sat there, nearly sobbing my words out. The police and the counselor just sat there writing down what I said, but they looked on sympathetically. One of the officers asked me if I would like to tell my parents so they could press charges. At this point, I just wanted everything to end about this horrible situation and be done, so I just told them to do whatever they wanted. I just wanted this to stop. The counselor could tell I was already upset enough, so he sent me back to class, and me and my brother made a promise to never speak of this again. Sadie ended up getting into juvie for the rest of the school year, all the way until halfway through second semester of freshman year of high school. The school also had some changes to it too. Police officers were now on duty during school hours in the middle and high schools. We had stricter policies with bullying, and kids could now stay with teachers before, during, after school if they needed to. I never saw Sadie again after that, not even in passing. I later learned from one of her old friends that after senior year she dropped out to get her GED because the incident on her police record meant college was impossible. It's been over 9 years since that day on the sidewalk. I will admit, this is honestly not as bad as what other kids probably had to go through, but I still feel the trauma from that time in middle school, and especially from what Sadie did to me. After middle school, I had developed depression, severe social anxiety, and PTSD from the bullies. I can't fully blame the situation for everything, as maybe if I pushed a bit harder with the teachers and the principal, maybe this wouldn't have happened in the first place. But eventually things did end up getting better. I just wish I could go back to my 13-year-old self that had to endure all of that to say that everything was going to be okay. I am doing better now. I am looking into therapy. I am in university right now, and I cannot be prouder of how far I've come. I moved a lot growing up. By the time freshman year of high school came around, I had moved 7 or so times and was about a year and a half into my most recent move. I had found a pretty close group of friends in middle school, and we all went to high school together. I met him through one of those close friends. They were in a band together, and even though he was almost 4 years older than us, we welcomed him into our group. Sam was easily twice my size, tall and heavy-set, and originally kind of intimidating, although I was never afraid of large men before him. Lesson learned. I had a kind of bad home life, and I spent as much time as I could at school, sometimes hanging around the school campus until 6 or 7 at night with this friend group. 3 of us lived in the same direction, and we would walk the half-hour trip together until our paths split. One slightly colder evening, Sam offered to walk me home since the others had gone home already. I just thought he was being a gentleman. He mentioned something from a previous move when he lived in California. He didn't walk a friend home and something horrible happened. He left it at that, and I let him walk me home. We got a lot closer after that. We bonded over both living in California and exchanged numbers. He would message me late into the night about his depression and self-harm, and I just wanted to help. A few months later, he tried asking me out. It was this big romantic gesture. He learned a Disney song on the ukulele and sang to me in the cafeteria. But I was already dating someone, and when I turned him down, he got angry. A freaky, quiet, twitchy kind of angry. I felt so bad. I started seeing him everywhere. We're still friends, We still hung out in groups, but I would pass him on the street walking somewhere, and a few minutes later, I saw that he changed directions and had started to follow me. He would walk me to classes by following me in passing at a distance. I started to minimize the group time we spend together, and he would follow me more. I had friends meet me at each class and walk me to my next one because I felt unsafe. He knew where I lived. Then he started to talk, not to me, but to mutual friends about that one girl in California who he tried to walk home with. At first, she just shared my name, some crazy coincidence. Then she had the same brown curly hair and blue eyes. And every time he rambled about her, she became more and more like me. And then he said what happened. Over literal weeks, this fantasy evolved. They were walking home, and they were jumped by some guy with a knife. It was a robbery gone wrong on her birthday, January 24th, my birthday. And she died horribly, and he couldn't react in time. She bled out in his arms. Sarah, who has brown curly hair, blue eyes, my name, my birthday, and sounds just like me, bled out in his arms. Each retelling added more and more detail. And this guy with his sick fantasy about my death would follow me around and knew where I lived. My boyfriend was abusive, mentally and physically. But I stayed as close to him as I could whenever I could, because if the worst happened, I knew for sure he could throw a punch. I never felt safe at school or in our little town walking home from school in the dark. One day at school, he had a breakdown, freaked out, and ran out of the school in a panic. I was sent after him, and I found him curled up on the floor. I got closer, I knew about his anxiety and depression, and my safety aside, I wanted to make sure he was okay. It was then that he told me this horrifying story that I had been hearing from mutual friends with added details. We had been walking home from a concert in California. We passed a dark alley, and a homeless man came out with a rusty knife and asked for anything valuable. I fumbled for my phone. I didn't have anything else on me, and he thought I was calling the cops. He stabbed me, once, twice, again and again, and Sam stood there horrified. He saw red and grabbed a broken glass bottle near my body and attacked the homeless man. He killed him with his own knife. He told me he killed someone. My stalker killed someone. It didn't matter how messed up he was anymore. I didn't care if it was a fantasy or real. I didn't care how it would affect his mental health anymore. I wanted to go to the police. I was scared for my life. My friends convinced me to go to the school counselor first. That morning we went and told them everything. The stalking, the stories, how he admitted to murder, and that was the reason they moved from California. How I was afraid for my life and wanted to call the police. The counselor didn't take us seriously. She went to the principal, and the principal, not a mental health expert, called Sam in to talk about the accusations. The principal then informed me that he did not think that Sam had any kind of mental illness or that I was in any danger. And that was that. I lost faith in adults and gave up on going to the police. I stayed with my friend, walking me in between classes, hiding behind my abusive boyfriend, and looking behind me every step of my walk home that year. The counselors ended up gaslighting us to the point where this all feels like a fever dream now, and I would think it's made up if it weren't for my journal entries, recording the events and my growing panic, and the similar stories from my friend group. Edit, clarifying some confusion. I don't think anyone actually died in California. I think he is a pathological liar, and that he was so deep in a fantasy that he had convinced himself it was real. No, I wasn't physically hurt, but it was emotionally scarring, and the threat that he posed to me was 100% real.